any technology challenges in particular? Could you talk about some of those challenges and maybe also what sparked the decision to move to a cloud-based solution with Workday Human Capital and Financial Management?
Sure, Donna. So Marymount happens to be a customer and longstanding with an ERP system that goes back for us 35 or 40 years, almost 40 years, actually. Quite remarkable. So we've had a long-standing system there that served us well, but of course it's based on technology that is not at all where we would like to be today. And the motivation in part for bringing Workday here would have derived from the sense that we really needed to move on to a new contemporary platform for our services. We also are very much involved with student facing activities. We're a tuition dependent institution where students are what we care about the most, whether it's recruiting them, retaining them, making sure that they have a great experience here. And we're a relatively small school, as Robin mentioned, so we're very able to focus on our student body. So we want to use technology to improve everything about their experience here, whether it be the academic experience in the classroom or their administrative experience, which of course Workday would help out. So we several years ago began the journey with Workday, starting with HCM, and we were able to produce a functioning HCM system in perhaps record time. I'm not quite sure, but it was less than a year that it took us to bring up HR. And then, as Robin mentioned, we moved into the finance system implementation, had a period there where we had to pause for a while because we had some unexpected resource constraints that kind of slowed down the project, but that got resolved. And when it got resolved, we picked right back up again. And in July of this year, we're able to implement the finance portion of the system. So after about 2 years, having gotten through the core products of HCM and finance, we were then well poised to move on to the foundational objective, really, of the whole process, which was to address our student administrative needs. And so we're now engaged in the student project, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk a bit more about that.
Thanks, Carl. That's great insight to understand why some of those initial decisions were made. And Robin, let's get your perspective. As a CFO, what were some of the benefits about moving to the cloud that Marymount was needing that they incorporated into their decision and selection process as they started their digital transformation journey?
Sure, I can speak to that. I'll speak from the finance perspective, and I also would like to touch upon some other student pieces. But when I joined Marymount, there were a myriad of processes that were still leveraging paper. The procure to pay process, there were some timesheets that were still done in paper, one-time payments. And so I think that one of the biggest motivators and wins with Workday is that we were able to automate many of those processes. And in automating those things, it is also a time savings for the staff who were formerly pushing that paper. And that allows them to be freed up to do other things, be more strategic, and foster more cross-functional and stakeholder engagement. When it comes to student, I think it's important that we have a system that allows a 360-degree view of the student. So all aspects of the student, administrative, academic, and of course financial. No one likes to talk about that, but that's necessary too. And I mentioned before about our HSI status, and that how that's part of it's in our DNA for diversity and inclusion. And it's important to mention that a big piece of the HSI status achievement is that we want to better represent underrepresented students. So that Latin population, they have been enrolling in college, more so, trending upward since the turn of the century, but the graduation rates are still low. So it's important that we have a system, a state-of-the-art cloud technology system that can help us with supporting them towards student success through allowing them to utilize their phones or their computers to register for class, because many of not just those students but our other students they may come on campus just to go to class. They may have jobs and they have families. So they need a mechanism to engage us in a way that's going to be accessible but high performing. So I think that's one, again, reasons why Workday was selected.
Thank you, Robin. Well, speaking of high performing, I know that higher education institutions also have a priority in considering application security as a core competency to ensure secured access to all levels. Carl, let's go back to you for this question. Can you share with us what it means to be able to trust that your data is secure and how your business services are secured at multiple levels?
Sure. Well, you know, the whole security environment is one that we, of course, take very seriously, but it's really a challenge, naturally, to be able to secure our systems. So moving to Workday for our core administrative systems was a real advance for us because, to be perfectly candid about it, we obviously anticipate that Workday has the resources for a company of its scale to be able to do the kind of information security due diligence and to secure its systems that would be frankly very challenging for us to even pretend to reach. So although we do a great job as within our resources, we know that Workday has the capability as a cloud-based service built on modern technologies to be able to secure our data in a way that we can both rely on and use as a simplification of our environment. You know, so today we might have we have responsibility in our legacy system for things like disaster recovery scenarios, and of course providing the firewall protection for locally hosted servers and that sort of thing. Those kinds of security measures and traditional IT functions are handled by Workday on our behalf, of course, as a cloud solution. And so that both simplifies our environment on a day-to-day basis and gives us a much better overall operation than we would have been able to do on ourselves. We also have used Workday as a way to kind of leverage the introduction into the campus of two-factor authentication for our systems. It's one of the things that we already do with Workday, of course, and getting people familiar with what that means is enabling us to use that with more and more of our locally hosted applications as well. So it's a real comfort to be able to have our data in a context where it's more secure. Also, the basic the security model within Workday itself and the capabilities it gives us for determining how our users access the system is it's very functional for us. It's something of a challenge to implement. I'll acknowledge that as well, but it gives us the tool set we really need to be able to assure that the right people have access to the right data at the right time.
Thank you, Carl. It does seem that with past and present events of this time, this is certainly a top concern for higher education institutions right now. Let's go ahead and change over to Robin for our next question. Robin, as part of the leadership team and in your experience as Marymount CFO, can you provide insight on how Workday solutions have enhanced your day-to-day administration, as well as empowerment toward the business process framework?
Sure, I can certainly do that. I alluded to the procurement to pay process, and I just want to talk about that again. So I mentioned there was there was a lot of paper involved in the process before, and it wasn't just that. The financial services team would be inundated with emails or calls asking where is an invoice in the pipeline, where's my requisition in the business process. And one of the things I always love about Workday is the business process framework is very powerful. So once something is inputted into Workday for action, and if you are part of that process flow, as a user, you can log in and actually see where in the cycle your request is, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. So that has actually, again, it's empowered users to be able to go online to see for themselves. And also, I mentioned time tracking about how we had timesheets before. We don't have to, but even with exempt staff, we have exception-based timekeeping now. So it means that, of course, as employees and managers, we just have to enter in our time off. But that's easy to do in Workday, and managers can track their team, would see their teams, their usage, their balances. It's very user friendly. Um, and one other big win is with journal entries. So before, for the accounting team, journal entries were, if there's any accountants on the phone, lots of paper, we're printing out a stack of paper, someone's manually signing off, like, yes, I saw this, yes, this is appropriate. Well, just journal entries themselves, that it is an automated function in Workday. It can be initiated and approved within Workday. So we, of course, have appropriate internal controls, and you can attach documentation to the journal entry. And automating that process has, again, it's freed my team, and I'm happy that next month, what we're going to start doing is have these, you may not find them fun, but financial statement, open houses, where we'll invite people and we'll talk about financial statements. We may talk about the budget versus actual stats in the university, and just foster more stakeholder engagement and be able to be more transparent with the data and the financial position of the institution. And some of those things wouldn't be possible if we weren't bogged down with some of the, minutia of accounting work.
Great. I know that you touched a little bit about the streamlining of the reports and workflows. Do you have any specific examples that you could share with our audience today?
But yeah, yes, I do. I mentioned the budget versus actual report,
Mhm.
and there was a report of that kind in the legacy system, but it wasn't very user friendly. The UI was just kind of old and outdated. And with Workday, a user they can go online, they can enter in their cost center, they can see their budget versus actual report on screen. They can click on any number and see the drill down as to what makes up that number, go even further to see what invoice that may be tied to, or what revenue component may be tied to. It can be exported into Excel, and then you can also do additional modeling with that. And there have been at least a few VPs. I mean, I can share anecdotally, who told me they love this reporting tool, and they've been able to use it to make management decisions and also to do like strategic planning for next year, because it is time to plan the budget for next fiscal year.
Great. And kind of as a follow-up to your response, with the streamlining of operations, can you speak to maybe perhaps your stakeholders' experience with that and their engagement and collaboration as well?
Sure. I mentioned one example that's to come. So that is with like the financial statements or financial, reporting open house. That it will be a huge win for stakeholder engagement, because it's not something that's been done. I think that although the financial data has been there to share, many stakeholders may feel that, formerly administration wasn't as transparent. It wasn't intentional. I just think that the communication was needed to be enhanced. So that to me, I'm very happy to be able to do that, to be able to offer that to the stakeholders so they can have more insight into where we are financially. So that stakeholder engagement is very key. I also will say there's many processes where HR and finance kind of share. And before, finance was still in the legacy system and HR was in Workday, because they went live first. And sometimes it would create some, miscommunications or missteps because we were in disparate systems. But now with us being in the same system, we're speaking the same language, we're looking at the same functionality, the same types of screens. So it has enhanced our ability to communicate with each other, and to, problem solve if there's an issue that crosses both systems. And then also to one thing that that we're also working on is building some joint job aids, because there's certain processes like hiring that are very key, that span both, that go across both areas. So being in the same system in Workday, and again, it has improved that departmental engagement and resolution and problem solving.
Well, it certainly sounds like there has been improvements, so That's great to hear. And I know, Carl, earlier you had mentioned the short span of time for implementation. I know there may be some people on this webinar that may be either going through the process or just starting. Can you first tell us about kind of the timeline for implementation and some details about the process that you can share with the audience today?
Sure. And before I do that, I want to echo something that that Robin just said. As one of the users of the Workday budgeting reports that we now have, that's really a pleasure because you have a full interactive drill down capability. So when I look at my budget, I can easily click on the thing and see and answer my own question about what made up that particular line item and what the underlying purchase was and so on. So it's a really great tool for that sort of thing. We really appreciate being able to use it. So the timeline for this really would have begun several years ago before, as both on two fronts simultaneously. One would have been, of course, the process of determining that Workday was the right solution for us and working through the details of contracts and so on. But the other thing that's worth remembering is that there's another process that one has to go through at the same time, which is the selection of an implementation partner. In our case, that happens to be Collaborative Solutions, but that's a major effort in its own right that takes a lot of time at the beginning of these projects to evaluate and negotiate the contract that you have with the partner that you're going to use for the next many years. And in our case, that many year period is certainly at least a 4-year period that began back in 2018 and at the moment will go through 2023 to when the student system goes live. So, if we had about a year at best, let's say for HCM, another year for finance, realistically, student is a 2-year project. And those timelines would probably be considered by many folks to be particularly aggressive and a challenge to meet. But it's really depends on your institution and the number of moving parts you have, right? As a smaller school, Marymount has perhaps a little easier path to follow in getting the job done. But it's at least a 4-year process end to end if you're going to use the student system as well. And along with that timeline comes some challenges that are worth really emphasizing. I mean, during much of that period, and Robin spoke to this a little bit, we had to maintain our legacy system and still do. And so today we went through a period where HR was in Workday, but the legacy system still was finance. Now the legacy system is student, but with Workday and finance, HCM and finance together in Workday. So there's a synchronization, problem that you have to resolve to be able to make that transition work effectively and be able to still do business with Workday, with one foot in Workday and one foot in something else, right? So that's a little bit of a challenge for anybody to master, but it's a key part of the whole understanding of these projects. We also, of course, have to spend a great deal of effort on change management. The implementation of a system like Workday, when you have had a legacy system for as long as we have, means that there's a tremendous amount of change for individuals at the institution to absorb and to come to terms with, and new things to learn while continuing to manage their old procedures and business processes. So it's a significant lift. It's exciting, and the good thing is that at this institution we have had total support from the upper management, the president on down. Everybody is on the team with knowing that Workday is the solution that we really want to get to, and that it's the best thing for us. So that there's a lot of support to make us, help us get through the challenges of any implementation of the size and scope.
Sounds like the project, the scale and the scope of the project was quite large. However, I do have a question, any targets and milestones while you were going through that you'd like to share as well?
Yeah, so we wanted to get HR going as fast as we could because it's a foundation for everything. And so as I suggested, we were able to bring that live in about 9 months. The targets that one sets for the finance system are a little bit, it depends a little bit on your fiscal year and how you do your financial reporting. The ideal time to implement something like this would be at the beginning of a fiscal year, which is what we did. But at various times, we contemplated the possibility of doing it at the end of a quarter and so on. So you have to understand the best place to be from that standpoint. And then payroll, of course, has its own natural calendar that you want to try to meet. So there are some issues with that. The more rigorous sort of deadlines that you have to worry about, though, are on the student side and the academic calendar, and making the practical needs of getting the academic calendar fulfilled as you're implementing different parts of the system, to have them line up, right? So if you're doing recruitment and admissions, they naturally come first in sequence. Financial aid is very early on, and so on. So you have a kind of a rolling adoption period. So in our case, we'll have multiple go lives, as we call them, for the student system at 3 or 4 different points over the course of that 2-year implementation, culminating finally in the final system, which for us will be in fall of 23. So it's a timeline that really has to match your academic calendar, and there's a certain amount of risk associated with that, because if you happen to sort of miss the target, then you may have to wait a full year, to be able to get back to being able to stay within the cycle of the academic year. So it's requires a lot of good planning to be able to stay on target with it.
Thanks, Carl. Robin, how about from your point of view? Can you provide some additional lessons learned examples from your perspective?
Sure, lessons learned. I think it's important that organizations don't minimize the time that's needed for training. Training is key. Training of your subject matter experts, in advance of the implementation or right when it gets started. And I understand that organizations have varying degrees of, financial resources or bandwidth of their team. But as much as you can do that, it's very helpful. And then also for end user training, Carl alluded to change management. And to me, change management is not just managing the change or the feeling about the change, but it's ensuring you have good adoption, and good training and good communication. So if you have, it's great if an organization can have someone who's focused on that effort, and that you well plan out the end user training. So I just wanted to say that. And another thing would be, I would talk about, is data, especially when you're moving from a legacy system to something like Workday. And if you've been in a legacy system for 35 plus years, like Marymount was in, or even, just a long time, you will have built up lots of data. And some of it's going to be dirty. Obviously, we have dirty data. And then, but Workday is only going to be as good as, the data that you have in there. So if you put dirty data in, you might get dirty results out. So if an organization can spend time doing some data cleanup before implementation or somewhere along the cycle, that's great. I can say with at Marymount, what we did, just one example, there's many examples, but the supplier list had grown astronomically in the legacy system. So the team spent a lot of time paring down that list and creating efficiencies with that. And that helped in many ways. It helped with not just the build up for the vendors, it helped with setting up, we have an integration with a payment, the integrated payables tool with our bank that required a vendor list. So there are many downstream effects for data. And lastly, I would say governance is important. If you have 2 more things, governance is important because as you can, as and maybe you all can hear that when you have a fully integrated system like Workday, everything one person does or something one person does could affect something somebody else does. And so you really should have a cross-functional group of folks who are providing governance and oversight for your program, so that you're making decisions, and that's for the good of the organization, and no one area is, I guess is that favored over another. And lastly, I'll talk about a support model. There are many various types of support models someone could have for Workday after implementing. You could have a group that's wholly in IT, which thanks to Carl. I think he's going to do that. Where you can have a hybrid where you have some folks embedded in departments, and as well as in IT. But it's, organization should try to envision that before you get to go live, because that support is going to be needed right away. And so it helps with that adoption and with stakeholder acceptance if you have a good support model, ready to go as soon as you go live.
Great. And Robin, just to mention a little bit about the stakeholder experience that you mentioned earlier, with you both holding strategic leadership positions at the university, how has working together empowered not only your roles as CFO and Carl as a CIO, but also aligned the campus, enabling you to make better strategic decisions?
So I mean, I will say, I'm not just saying this because he's on the call, but Carl and I have a really good working relationship. And it definitely has enhanced the success and ongoing work we need to do with Workday. So to have a good working relationship and have open lines of communication, because of course we may not always agree, but we work very well together. In the end, we do come to a consensus, and that's going to be exponentially more important with student, because it's not just me for finance, it's so many modules. So it'll be multiple leaders, and that again kind of goes back to our song about governance and ensuring that also help foster that support. And it sets an example, at the, for the community, for the campus. If, we have the group of leaders who are working well together, that should trickle down or to the rest of the community. And that should be, the theme, working together, working well cross-functionally in and out of the system.
I always thought we agreed on everything, Robin. But to follow up on that, the system like Workday affects everyone, right? And so we really have to have leadership that recognizes that we're all in it together, and that nobody can really act independently of the rest of the considerations that the institution has. And so we all have to kind of look out for each other in going down this path, and be very aware of the bigger picture, right? So no room for silos in this kind of a project. It really does depend for its success on everybody pulling together and being on the same page.
Well, it sounds like better alignment not only helps, but it helps expedite better decisions and make
Right.
better strategic decisions overall. So, well, talking about strategic decisions, Carl, what's in the future or the roadmap for Marymount and going into 2022?
Right. So, we've got several things. Of course, we want to enhance and improve on what we've already done with HCM and finance. So there's always incremental things that we might be able to tweak and make better and of course, as we review our business processes and understand the system better, we want to, take more advantage of all the capabilities that are in Workday that perhaps we might not have had enough time to implement initially. So kind of an iterative process on what we've already done. We also have a project that Robin's folks are particularly involved in now to implement the portion of Workday called adaptive planning. So that's key to our future budgeting issues. And then the other thing that we're going to do, and we added this to our project kind of, I shouldn't say at the last minute, but it was definitely a later addition, was to use the Workday tool called Prism Analytics as part of our strategy. And so our plan is to put some of our legacy data that doesn't really find a natural home in Workday in the Prism Analytics space instead, and also to bring in data from some other systems, hopefully, so that we can use the tool set that is exposed by having that product along with the core Workday deliverables work in concert and enable us to have kind of a home for all the institution's data, including the things that might not have found a natural place in Workday. That's a large project in its own right, but so between that and then of course the student system, right? So we are about maybe 7 or 8 months, I guess, into the formal implementation of student. As I mentioned earlier, it'll go on until fall of 2023. So that's really been our real, the hard pull that we've been making for for the campus and for the staff here in IT is to focus on student and to bring that about. And then we'll end up doing the same iterative thing again, right? The day that we say that we go live on student is not the day the project ends. The project will go on forever, really, right? Because and part of that is also because Workday delivers a new version of their software every 6 months. So there's always going to be activity surrounding the understanding and the adoption and the rollouts associated with new versions of the software. So it's a busy calendar, busy roadmap.
Well, we certainly appreciate the partnership that Marymount University has had with Workday. And thank you, Robin and Carl. We appreciate your insights and sharing some of that journey. Now let's, I think we've got about 15 minutes into the webinar. So let's go to some of our Q&A. If anyone has any questions for Carl and Robin, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section of your webinar, and we'll see if we can get to as many as we can. So let's go, and I'll go ahead and take a look at a few of these questions. Give me 1 second here. Let's see. All right, let's go to.
So Donna, while
Yes.
you're doing that, while you're looking for a quick question, I did want to add something on to what Carl said about our future roadmap,
Sure.
just real quick.
Absolutely.
So you talked about adaptive planning, and I wanted to say that in addition to it being very integral to budget development, because right now we're developing our budget, developing it primarily in Excel, but loading into Workday for tracking and management afterward. So that's I want to just call that out, that that's a very important win for us. But it's also going to support our move to evaluate and ultimately implement responsibility-centered management, so an RCM model. I know there's many other schools who are considering that, and adaptive planning is a good tool to support that that effort, because it's an all-new reporting tool set. And then lastly, I would say I wanted to share that it's not really a functionality roadmap item, but one thing about the future for Workday and change management is that Marymount is going to be developing or enlisting the support of departmental champions. And that's to get individual departments more engaged and to feel more involved, included in the process, to affect change in training and things of that nature. So I think that's also a lessons learned I would add to. It's something that we're going to do and that other institutions should do to keep stakeholder engagement. So I don't want to derail, but I just thought I'd throw those two out there.
It actually is a perfect segue, Robin, because our next question has to do with engagement from the audience. So could you share more about the tools you use to encourage constituent engagement during decision testing and training specifically?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So departmental champions is one thing. I didn't use that as much at Marymount yet. I'm sure we'll do that more with student, but it's something that I've used in my past at UMGC. But so you ask the department head to pick someone in their unit to be a champion, and that person is they kind of work within the department to raise excitement about the product. We share with them maybe a PowerPoint as a briefing about Workday, and what are we doing? What are the how's it going to impact the community? How is it going to impact your department, so that they have talking points to speak to. Another important thing to do, or beneficial thing to do, is during testing, is have like a user experience kind of window. We actually invite, it could be the same departmental champions or other people from the department, to come in and actually test pieces of functionality before you roll out widespread user acceptance testing, because they can actually walk through the job aids that you may have created for a process and provide feedback on how well this job aid really addressed what I need to know, so that the project team can make changes in advance of rolling out to the broader community. And then I think newsletters are good, websites are good to provide timely and regular status updates on where the project may be, the status of the project.
This may not have been what people meant by tool, but in asking this question, but we should note what we're doing here today with WebEx. So
Yeah.
although our project began before COVID, and as a consequence, it was fairly traditional, right, with folks meeting face to face and having our implementation partner coming to the campus and working with us directly. It wasn't too long, before COVID caught up with us, and so the last part of the implementation of finance was done with all using Zoom and remote technologies. And successfully so, to the point that it became clear to us that even if COVID weren't an issue, we wanted to intentionally structure the student implementation so that it would be all done remotely. Frankly, it's a cost savings to the institution, of course, not to incur the expenses that we would normally have had for travel and all the rest. So we do with the entire student project, it'll be done remotely, even after COVID is over with. And I think it's worked really well. It's remarkable, actually.
Great. Well, that's great to hear. And the next question asks, you're moving to Workday HCM and Finance. Are you moving to Workday Student? And I think you alluded on that earlier, Carl. So we'll kind of move past that. But can you describe? They're also asking, can you describe the size and composition of your organization or team structure for your Workday implementation, steering committee, working group, etc.?
Yeah, I can do it in about 2 words. It's too small. So we have a very we're a small institution, so we have a relatively small staff, both in my office as well as in our end user offices and registrar of finance and so forth. What we have done is augment our staff with, of course, with our implementation partners, folks, but with consultants that we've brought in who had specific subject matter knowledge in certain areas at times when that would really be necessary for us. So we have definitely gone the path of having some staff augmentation from professional service firms as part of the key. And it's in the ideal case, we would have wanted to have had a backfill staff and others who could have been dedicated to the project more so than we've been able to do. But I think we've managed to do it by asking a lot of our staff and asking them to work harder, work smarter with outside resources when we need to bring them in.
Great. And a follow-up question to that from the same person is, did you hire an internal project director?
We did not hire an internal director in the sense of an independent a person who was dedicated just to that. What we did was to assign much of that responsibility to our current director of administrative systems, a person who would have run the department that oversaw the legacy system, and they took on that project management role, along with the shared, project management that we had from the implementation partner as well.
Great. Well, thank you. The next question says, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently if you were starting this effort today? That's a big question.
Well, I guess if and Robin can speak for herself as well, but I think we would have tried to be more. We would have tried to make the case earlier on for more support staff, more backfill. We're getting the job done, but it's hard. It's a major stress point for a lot of folks here. So we probably would have wanted to rethink that a bit, possibly some of the scheduling aspects of how rapidly we could get it done. But that has to play against the reality of other external requirements. We have this system that's very old and running on old hardware, and we didn't want to have to reinvest in that. We wanted to be able to start enjoying some of the benefits of saving some money from supporting our old systems and so on, right? So there's a lot of factors that play into that. But I think being able to perhaps have a better, more resources associated with change management, with training development would have been would be good. We definitely have some gaps that we'd like to be able to fill, but I think, none of them are game stoppers by any means, but they all would make life a little bit easier for us if we had some more resources to attend to some of our day-to-day operations. What do you think, Robin?
I agree. I think I echo that, and I think you're right that you have to deal with the reality of what the resources your organization has. But it, of course, it's ideal if you can backfill the individuals that are assigned to work on the project. That's ideal. It's very tough for. I'm just going to speak with the finance team. It's tough to manage the day-to-day operations while also being a subject matter expert for a project and having to support, configuration and support testing. So as much as an organization can backfill or get in additional resources, the better. And then kind of to go back to the question about size, even though I know that our situation, again, it's based on the reality of what we have, but your steering committee at the least should be made up of the leaders responsible for the functions that you're implementing. I think the largest steering committee I know of maybe 5 or 6. You don't want to get too big because then you can't ever make a decision. So I just wanted to allude to that. And also, one thing that we are doing, Carl, even though we haven't hired these people yet, is there's going to be a analyst in finance. There's going to be one in HR, a functional person, and I'm sure we'll do something similar with in the student areas, because it's important to have the functional folks who work with the technical people.
The other thing I'd mention, Donna, is that Workday is all about business processes and being able to configure your system to match what you're trying to achieve. I think if we would have been better off if we had a much more thorough documentation and appreciation of our own internal business processes, done before pre-project, right? So long before you have hired a firm to help you implement or bring in Workday, you really want to be sure that you have a solid understanding of what your current processes are, so that you also can, through that process, expose where you might see opportunities for change. And so, that really would have been really helpful if we had sort of more time to think through some of the opportunities that Workday presents for us as we consider how we do business now and how we might be able to do it smarter in the future.
Great. Well, I
Yes.
appreciate that. I think we have time for one more question. So we'll end with, did you redo your chart of accounts with the transition to Workday? I think that's a more specific question.
Yeah, we did redo it. It's kind of hard to explain how, but I would be happy to network with anyone who'd like to talk about it. But we did have to redo. I'll just say this, that the GL structure in Colleague is a chart string, and it's it was fund, object code, and department. But in Workday, we have revenue and spend categories and cost centers, and we still have fund code. We also added on project. So again, I'm happy to talk with anyone afterward, but we did do it. We do it somewhat.
Great, thank you. I know we're coming to close to the end of the presentation. So as we wrap up today's webinar, any parting thoughts or advice? I know, Carl, you'd just given one on one of your responses for some of the institutions that are thinking about their digital transformation to the cloud. Let's start with you, Robin.
I would just say don't, like the sky should be the limit. People should, your folks should come into, if you're implementing a project, they should come into it an open mind and not trying to recreate what you already have. They should look to the future about what you want, what the mission is, what the goal is, what initiatives are, and build to that instead of trying to recreate.
Great, Carl, how about you?
Absolutely. Do not take your old system and replicate it in Workday. You miss the whole point if you do that.
Great. Well, thank you both for your time today and sharing your journey and experience, as well as your leadership from Marymount University's experience in accelerating to the cloud. And we appreciate Marymount University also partnering with Workday as well. Thank you to the University Business for hosting today's webinar. And to all of you who attended today, we hope that you have found this session helpful and interactive as you and your institution may be in the process of a digital transformation journey and acceleration to the cloud. For more information of Workday for Higher Ed, please visit our Workday Higher Ed industry webpage or follow us on our LinkedIn Workday Higher Ed page. Thank you again for joining everyone and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Robin and Carl, for sharing all of your experiences at Marymount. And I'd just like to mention that if there were any questions, and I did see quite a few that came through that we didn't get to, then I'm sure that our partners at Workday will be willing to get back to your questions individually after today's webinar. And also, as I go through my closing slides in just a few moments, please feel free to continue submitting your questions if any do come to mind. And to you, our audience, I would also like to thank you for joining us today. For those of you who particularly enjoyed our presentation, you'll be pleased to know there are many more upcoming web seminars like this one that are provided by University Business, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, and current issues in higher ed. We have a wide range of readers who subscribe for free to UB, and they stay up to date with us through our print magazine, newsletters, and web seminars like this one. And also, if you would like to watch this web seminar again, or for those of you who believe that the solutions provided would be helpful to your colleagues, you will be pleased to know that our team at UB, we will be sending you an email later tomorrow with an on-demand recording of this web seminar and the link to the slides. And so with that, on behalf of UB, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks, everyone. Take care, be well, and stay safe. Thank you. Okay, we are currently in the practice session, so no one else can hear us. But again, I apologize for that recording issue at the beginning. I was able to figure out about 5 minutes in that I could record directly to my desktop. So at least we got the good part of it recorded. And you're currently muted, everyone, Donna, as well.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Stephen, for at least
We've all
getting
been there, Steve.
Yeah.
That was high pressure in the beginning, right, Stephen?
Yes. Yes, it was. And Donna, and Crystal, if you would like to stay on afterwards, I do have Fern with us as well to speak with you if you'd like.
Sounds great.
Hi, everybody. Is there anything that we can do to make up for the fact that we missed the beginning of the recording?
Well, we were recording on our phones and I think QuickTime. So I believe we got the first half and it'll be through audio. So we'll see what we can pull as far as quotes from that. But as far as video content, we won't have that.
Well, I very much apologize. In the 9 years that I've been here, this is the very first time that this has happened. So my apologies.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could share the recording. I tried to screen record as much as I could from my end too. I don't know if there's anything we can do just to see where we were able to start the transition and see if there's a easy way to make the recording viable to use.
Sure, definitely. I mean, I know I will be sharing all of the info, including the registration report and the recording tomorrow. So you can expect that from me tomorrow. And I know it started in the middle of when Carl was introducing himself. So it was near the beginning. But unfortunately, Robin, your intro wasn't
All right.
recorded.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can work something out where we can get the screen recording that I grabbed and then kind of make the two, because I'd hate for, Robin not to have an introduction.
I would agree.
But we can figure that out offline.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank both Robin and Carl. I know that this was a lot of time from your part, so we really, really appreciate it. And I love all of the responses that you provided and just the engagement with the questions that were coming in as well. So we really appreciate your time and your partnership and all of your efforts. So
No
thank you very
problem.
much.
It was
Thank
awesome.
you, Donna.
Good. I'm
Yeah,
glad,
you're
I'm glad that you were pleased.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
All right.
All righty.
Hey,
All right,
guys.
well, have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine out there in Virginia,
Thank
Northern
you.
Virginia.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Hey, Fern. Yeah,